Welcome back into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Report. I am Steven Serda. It is Friday, December 15th, just a couple of days away from the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the New England Patriots. Looking to get back in the win column in week 15. Let me welcome in the leader of Arrowhead Pride, Pete Sweeney. If you're watching us on our live stream, you can, as always, submit some questions, leave some observations in the comment section. We'll try to get to them before we get out of here this morning. Sween, I hope you started your Las Vegas Raiders in your fantasy playoff matchups as they're coming off of just an absolute drubbing, a 63-21 win over Easton Stick in the Los Angeles Chargers on Thursday night.
There's no way to describe that game other than cartoonish, right? Like it almost was like one of those games that would be on The Simpsons where you like look up and it's like 1,000-0, and it was never a game. And it's relevant to Kansas City because I think, if there was any question of like, would Brandon Staley get one more shot at this? Like, and I think at that point, going into the game last night, it was like very low, like 10%, like, maybe if they show something here at the end with the backup quarterback. But if there was any question of Staley's job, it's over. I mean, I tweeted out last night, it'll be Andy Reid and Sean Payton. I think Vegas will keep Antonio Pierce now. It seems like they've really rallied around him. And so who's that fourth head coach? Is it Bill Belichick? Is it somebody else? I think, if you went to like the coaching lists since 2013 in the AFC West, Andy Reid would just be Andy Reid. And then every other team now has like 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 coaches. And it's because of the Chiefs and their consistent success. And, you wonder who is next for the Chargers. They will definitely be moving on from their head coach, in my opinion.
I tend to agree with you. I think Antonio Pierce has done enough that he probably deserves another chance. Here.
And the thing about Pierce is too, and this is what helps Pierce, is like they just messed up like a few years ago by going away from the guy that got him to the playoffs and the interim coach, and then got Gruden, was fine at first, but obviously ended up being a mess with that whole scandal and everything. But so you agree with me? You think Pierce is here to stay?
Yeah, and Josh McDaniels obviously just a disaster hire for the Las Vegas Raiders. It seems like Antonio Pierce has his head on his shoulders, and it seems like that defense is playing really well. I think they've been more impressive than people probably realize. And last night was absolutely insane. Like they were up 42-0 before halftime.
Good pickup by you. It's early in the morning. It went Gruden, Bisaccia, then McDaniel, right? But still, they should have stuck with the guy that got him to the postseason in a really bad situation. And I think there's just been a different feel with Pierce with the Raiders. So, if Mr. Davis isn't dumb, I think they should lean into what's working right now. Anyway, back to this Kansas City Chiefs, New England Patriots game.
Yeah. And we'll get into all of that stuff. We've got the injury updates from Thursday ahead of this week 15 matchup. I have to imagine that Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is fired before the end of the day today. Do
you think today?
EOD, end of day. I think he is fired as the Los Angeles Chargers head coach. That was brutal last night. Just reporters just asking him, like, do you think you deserve to be the head coach still? And like, what is he supposed to say? No, not after that performance.
At a certain point, you feel bad for the guy. I mean, I think he's a good defensive mind, right? Like he'll be in the league somewhere. Just he won't be a head coach anytime soon.
I don't know, man. That performance against the Raiders, I feel like that's the thing that relegates you to Division II defensive coordinator for a couple of years.
Anybody can use a year off, Steve. And then you're a hot name again the next year. So maybe you take 2024 off if you're him, and then come back as a D coordinator.
So good news for the Kansas City Chiefs. The bottom of the AFC West is still just absolutely awful. They look to get back in the win column on a 2-game losing streak. We've talked about it plenty this week. Losers of 4 of their last 6. The Broncos all of a sudden right on their heels in the division, and the Chiefs are the 3 seed in the AFC playoff picture. So They travel to New England week 15, and we'll get into the injury report again. But Pete, I think we talked about this a little bit last night on Show and BK. That's available for you now on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I highly encourage you to go check that out. I think we had a very good therapy session in a lot of ways last night on the Kansas City Chiefs. But this was something that we talked about on the show, and I'm curious just to get your opinion about it, because a lot has been made about the Chiefs' schedule the rest of the way. And obviously, it's very favorable for this team to win out. And, depending on what happens with the Dolphins and the Ravens, who have much tougher schedules the rest of the way than the Kansas City Chiefs do, like maybe number one seeds still in play. Obviously, they need a lot of help there. But is there anything over these final 4 games? And we know the Patriots struggles, and it seems like Bill Belichick is probably done there, just ending one of the greatest coaching reigns in NFL history this season. But like, is there anything you feel like you can learn about this Kansas City Chiefs team over the final month of the season before we get to the playoffs that is going to make you more confident that they can get it done against playoff caliber competition?
I think if they go into all 4 games and you get the beginning of the game, it's the NFL. Sometimes it can be up and down, but like by the end or middle of the third quarter, each game should be in hand. Like there shouldn't be this fear that you're going to be upset by the opposing team. And I actually think that will happen should the Chiefs stop making these offensive mistakes. And what an annoying year it's been, because we say it every week. We say it every single week. If the Chiefs just stop making mistakes, if they stop turning the football over and taking penalties and having the drops, then they can be this. Well, like at a certain point when it's week 15, you're this if you don't correct those mistakes. And so I just think a clean stretch here where the games are in control. You don't have to win every single one of these games. It's the NFL. I know there's backup quarterbacks, but you don't have to win every single game by 2 touchdowns. But just a feeling of, look, we're the better team. We know it. We're playing like it. And then, you get on the other side of that. Hopefully you're 4-0 and you're entering the playoffs with some steam and some more confidence here.
Yeah, I just don't. It's so favorable for the Kansas City Chiefs, and it worked out that way. Like I think at the beginning of the year, we would have looked at this late season schedule and thought like there's some moments for slip ups in there.
Yeah.
And the way this season has gone, it's been brutal across the NFL with these quarterback injuries and all of these superstar players just being injured this season. But I don't know that there's that much we can learn about this team from these games. Obviously, Jake Browning and the Cincinnati Bengals are playing really well right now, and Jake Browning has been really impressive. So maybe that game has a little bit more to it than we realized when Joe Burrow went down for the season. Yep. But I think for me to take anything away from this and say, like, I feel better about them going into the playoffs and moving forward after the way the season has gone, and we're so late into the regular season, like, I kind of think they would have to go on a run where it's just like complete and total domination, like kind of like the Dallas Cowboys have been on recently, where Dak Prescott has firmly put himself atop the MVP conversation because he is just out here absolutely decimating defenses on a weekly basis. And the Cowboys have put themselves in a situation where they've got a strong chance to win the division possibly now, and maybe compete for that 1 seed if the 49ers can slip up. Like, the Cowboys have really put themselves in a great position, and I do think Dak Prescott is the MVP at this point in the season. But I kind of feel like the Chiefs would have to do something like that for me to really believe it, because the knock on Dallas for so long this season was they can't beat good teams, but they absolutely destroy bad teams. And I want to see the Chiefs go on that kind of run. Like, I want to see them absolutely destroy these teams with no mercy, like we saw the Raiders do to the Chargers last night. Like, I want to see those kinds of performances from the Kansas City Chiefs over the last week of the season. I don't know if we're going to get that.
I appreciate what you're saying, and like, I don't disagree. I think if you're a Chiefs fan, like, that would be great. But even in this historical run that the Chiefs have gone on, like, have they really ever completely dominated teams? It's always close. Like, it's always, oh man, Kansas City's down, and is this it? And like, they would come back and win by 3, or they win by a touchdown. In the world of Vegas, and the casinos and the tall buildings, they never cover, right? Like this has never been Kansas City's MO to be that 49ers Cowboys type of team where they just crush teams. And so, Steve, I mean, listen, if you've been good, maybe Santa will deliver. I'll take 4 wins any way that they can get them. And I just feel like if they can do that, they'll still feel pretty good about themselves. I think it's more of the details offensively, like clean offensive football. I know that you want domination. If you can win the games, and again, stop doing these things to yourself that ruins your offensive rhythm and allows you or doesn't allow you to score, in the realm of 30 points. I think you're feeling pretty good at the end of this 4-game stretch.
Yeah, I think because I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to go on this run where they absolutely dominate these teams. But I think I will be very happy if the offense just doesn't turn the football over these final
Yeah.
4 games. Like I think
Yeah.
that's
If you
the
can,
most important thing here.
if you let's, I mean, put a number on it. Like if you can get through the 4 games and maybe have 2 turnovers and then it seems like that's like a lot to ask, but I think you're feeling great. I think you're feeling great about the playoffs and what's to come.
I think if they go on this 4-game winning streak and have 0 turnovers, like that's
Now
cause
you're
for celebration.
now
That
you're
I don't
feeling
think that's
great.
gonna happen, but
No,
I
I'll give
think
him 2. I'll give
yeah.
him 2 strikes. 3 strikes, you're out.
I think that would be my biggest takeaway for this would be like, okay, they're playoff ready at least. They're not shooting themselves in the foot week after week. And also it would be really nice if the defense could force a few turnovers here
Yeah.
because that's been kind of the one thing about this defense this season. While they've been impressive and they've been the reason that you're winning a lot of these games all year long, they don't force a ton of turnovers. And that's really one thing that kind of sets them apart from some of these other defenses like the Ravens or the Browns and like these teams that are kind of helping carry their teams into the playoffs. Like those teams force a lot of turnovers
Well,
and
yeah,
they wreak havoc.
you meant you mentioned the 49ers and the Cowboys. They're 11 and 10 respectively in the turnover differential. The Chiefs are -7. So that is a 17 and 18 turnover difference. So what would their record be if you could get 10 of those back, right? Like either the Chiefs getting the turnover or not turning it over. It would be better than 8 and 5. And so, I think that's what gives fans hope at this point. Like with this particular Chiefs team, it's like, man, if you just clean it up, I think you're right there, especially in the AFC. You're not in the conference with these 2 teams, and they'll probably knock each other out, right? So, um, well, just get right in this last month, and you never know what can happen in the playoffs.
It's tough to have a positive turnover differential when you only got 2 games on the entire season where you haven't turned the football over as an offense.
Yeah,
Like
not great.
that is not what you want for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think really headed into New England this week. That's all I want to see is no turnovers and can the defense create some turnovers because I think you absolutely can against Bailey Zappi and this New England Patriots team. But uh, we mentioned it earlier in the week. The Chiefs have had a lot of injuries this week. The injury report is long, but it seems like they've got some guys that are going to be up that Chiefs fans should be excited about. Drew Tranquil seems like he is easily going to clear the concussion protocol this week and hopefully be back in the mix. Nick Bolton has been limited all week dealing with an abdomen injury after coming back from that wrist injury. So you don't want to see that. He's going to be somebody to really pay attention to on Friday. Obviously, they'll have Tranquil back, but I think Chiefs fans would really like to see this defense get going with both of those players available because it's been a long time since they've had both those guys on the field together. And I think that we saw last week and the week before that teams have kind of found ways to exploit that linebacker room a little bit, especially with
Well,
the injuries that they have right now.
yeah, you think about the linebacker room, and I know that Drew Tranquil's back in the mix. I expect them to be at full strength. There was a little bit of a scare with Leo Chanel earlier in the week, but he's back to practice. He was sick, so you're looking at the full linebacker core. And I looked this up, Steve. The last time the Chiefs had a full strength linebacker room was October 22nd of this year, because last week Bolton came back, but Tranquil, wasn't there. Like so. A full game with all these guys, October 22nd. So This is a boost. I mean, I know there, of course, had to be a Twitter argument or a next argument about Tranquil or Bolt. No, the Chiefs are good when both of them are available because
Yeah.
we know that Spagnuolo likes to rotate it at every position, and the fact that you have these two guys that can be interchangeable to an extent and be on the field at the same time, I think is a very good thing for KC, and so. We'll see what reestablishing that second level can do for the defense. I know the number one thing that they're looking at this week is to maintain the run, because we know that like New England is going to be ground and pound, and then just faster starts. The Chiefs have not started out fast defensively these past couple of weeks, and it's put the offense in a little bit of a hole. And I know we keep going back to it, but when you're dealing with an offense who still is kind of seeking its identity in week 15, you can't really afford the slow starts, even as good as the defense has been, and so they'll be looking to right that area of weakness heading into this game in New England.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs defense is better when they have a rotation of Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil, when they can deploy both of those guys. Not totally sure why Nick Bolton seems to get more criticism than a linebacker like Willie Gay, who can be inconsistent at times himself, even though it seems like Willie Gay's ceiling is really high when he is playing well, but then when he's playing bad, he tends to play pretty bad. So so obviously Chiefs defense is going to be better if they have Tranquil and Bolton, but Bolton's Friday practice status is something to really monitor here as we
they have the wrist still on the injury report, and they added an abdomen, so they're just taking it easy on him. I think he's going to be fine to play. I'd imagine they're going to try to work him into a full practice today. He's been limited 2 days in a row, just easing him in this week. But I don't think this is the type of situation where Bolton is suddenly going to miss a game. I think he's just kind of working through it at this point.
But some players that do seem like there's a chance they could miss this week, and they're all important players. Donovan Smith dealing with a neck injury, has not practiced all week. It seems like rookie Wanya Morris is going to be up for another start. So that's something to watch on Sunday. He was impressive for the most part in his first career start. So that's something for Chiefs fans to pay attention to in Sunday's game. Also, it does not seem like Isaiah Pacheco is going to be available in this game. Has not practiced all week. Yeah. He hasn't been put on IR or anything, so it seems like the Chiefs are hopeful he can return here before the end of the regular season, but it is something that I'm starting to get a little bit worried about. And then another thing that has kind of flown under the radar this week, safety Mike Edwards did not practice Wednesday or Thursday with an illness. You hope he's available because Brian Cook is on IR, and if he's not available for some reason, if he can't get over this illness that he's been dealing with this week and play on Sunday, Chiefs could be shorthanded in that safety room. So that's something to definitely pay attention to ahead of this game.
Well, the benefit is that Shamari Connor is starting to turn it on. So, I think Mike Edwards is going to be like, it's rare where an illness keeps a guy out of a game. We don't get the details necessarily on what that illness is, but I'll look for Mike Edwards to be back at practice today. If he's not, Shamari Connor has been playing well. They're really high on Connor, and for good reason. We know about that interception that he made last week. That was borderline like an insane play. It's a shame that the game turned out the way it did, because I think we would have been talking more about that, but we'll see. I expect Edwards to be there today. We'll have that report at Arrowhead Pride. Of course, I'll be out there. Usually when do we go? 11:45 on my X account, PG Sweeney. The 2 points about the injuries you were talking about, though. Donovan Smith, I don't anticipate him to play. What'll be most interesting about that particular injury is when he is healthy. Will Wanya Morris do enough to just keep the job? I think that's not out of the cards, and so that's the most interesting thing there. I think there is, like I said, like you never want to have injuries or anything like that. There is a silver lining to the injury for the Chiefs in the long term, because they get to really see if Wanya Morris can be this guy for next year. And that allows you to plan in the off season and save a little bit of money by not having to invest necessarily into a tackle. If you got a good one on a rookie deal, Smith is only here for the year. And then with Isaiah Pacheco, I've said this all week that, the team will never take this stance publicly and all that, but they don't need Isaiah Pacheco to win the next 4 games. They just don't. They need Isaiah Pacheco to win in the playoffs. And so anything right now where you can get them in a position to be ready for the playoffs, I think they do. I think you made a good point about injured reserve. So they think it's 3 weeks or less, or else usually you put the player on IR so you can get another roster spot. So we'll see what happens with Pacheco. I don't anticipate him to play this week, and because we were doing some of this practice squad math yesterday, Steve. I don't think LaMichael Pirine has any elevations left, so I think you get one more week of Prince, and I believe if Pacheco was still out of the mix, then they would have to make a roster move, because I believe that both of those running backs in the practice squad would be out of elevations at that point. Needless to say, those are emergency players. Like, it's going to be the Edwards-Helaire and McKinnon show once again this weekend, we believe. So.
And it's also worth mentioning this week that the New England Patriots have one of the better run defenses in the NFL. And that's something that's been consistent with their defense all year long. So you can beat them in the passing game more than you can on the ground. So I would expect a heavy dose of that.
Perfect for Kansas City. Their passing game is so soft.
Yeah. So I would expect
New England actually has as we're kind of making fun of like the next 4 games in the schedule. New England actually has a defense. So the scenario in which New England makes this interesting is that Mike Vrabel and I guess Belichick was the father of this, but like mucking up the game, and just making it let's be alive in the fourth quarter. Let's be within 4 points in the fourth quarter and see what happens. Like, that would be how they do it. And like, you just it's that Chiefs offense that you've seen at times this year that just stalls and stalls and stalls and stalls, and then all of a sudden you're like, here we are again. But hopefully the offense gets off to a hot start for Kansas City. I think that they would be really boosted, both obviously in the game, but sort of at the beginning of this haul here, where you're trying to get 4 wins to put yourself in the best position to work your way back into the top seed of the AFC.
Yeah, it's still a Bill Belichick defense that can give you some problems, but offensively for the Patriots, they've got a lot of injuries that they've been dealing with all season long. Offensive lineman Trent Brown's dealing with an ankle and a hand injury. He was a limited participant on Wednesday, then did not practice on Thursday. So that's something to monitor. Running back Ramondre Stevenson, I'm assuming, is not going to be available this week. He's dealing with a serious ankle injury that he suffered a couple of weeks back. But also, the Patriots wide receiver core, which was already one of the worst in the NFL this season, has been dealing with tons of injuries, and they've got a ton of limited participants in practice all this week. Rookie Keyshawn Boutte was a limited participant in practice. To Mario Douglas, who has shown some stuff this season, also limited participant. Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, Matthew Slater, Tyquan Thornton, like their entire wide receiver core basically has been limited all week in practice. A lot of those guys have missed games here in the past couple of weeks. So I would imagine not all those guys are going to be available in this game. So this is an opportunity for the Chiefs defense that has had a couple of slow starts recently to, I think, really just kind of close the door on this thing early in the game and assert their dominance and say, okay, we're back. We're getting healthier and we're over this kind of slump that we had for a couple of weeks here.
Yeah, the receivers that you mentioned, of them, Boutte, Douglas, and Parker were all inactive last week. So those were the ones I think by the time this final injury report comes out, you're going to get a slew of questionables on the Patriots side. So you're not really going to know if these guys are playing. I know from like a fantasy football perspective, Demario Douglas has been like the breakout player, and so like he's been the most productive guy and probably is the one to watch. And when you're in the concussion protocol, a little mysterious as to whether or not he's going to get out of it. So, we'll see what his status is today. There's obviously the Juju storyline, and it's interesting. Like, I think if a player comes to your team for 1 year, is it really like this ultimate motivation game? Like, I don't necessarily feel as strongly as I do like with Juju playing the Chiefs as I did Tyreek. I know he won a championship in Kansas City, but he's a Steeler. Like, to me, he's a Steeler, right? Like, it matters more to me when he plays.
Also coming off his best game of the season. He had 4 receptions for 90 yards against the Steelers last week.
Well, that has been my point about like the wide receiver room too. Like, not to go off on a separate tangent here, but the room is the same as last year, essentially. I mean, you swapped out Smith-Schuster and you added in Rice, and I know that Smith-Schuster had a good game last week, but it really hasn't been.
No, it's been awful.
A great season for him, and so like I know we get like
He's
caught
on
up in all
pace for
that.
like what Sky Moore is this season.
You see these tweets and these posts about like how, bad Brett Veach did and the personnel, like it's the same room as last year. You know what I mean? So like, I think, at a certain extent, they deserve the benefit of the doubt. It has not gone the plan. Like, right. Like, MBS has clearly taken a step back. Sky Moore has not been, as good as maybe we thought he would be in year two. But it's not that different than last year when they won a championship with that room. And so like, I don't know. You hope that I still think that there's enough, like I've said it before, I think this team's good enough to win a title and certainly the AFC. If you get to the Super Bowl, we'll see about that matchup. But like, I just don't. I don't think the room for error is as wide as it maybe has been in the past. But you see Juju this week, and we'll see if those receivers are out of the mix. And if they are, then you're going to see a lot of Juju, and the Chiefs certainly know how to defend him with him having been on the team last year.
Yeah, it's definitely something to monitor on the Friday injury report ahead of this game on Sunday. We've also got Saturday football this week. So a lot of NFL action headed into week 15 that you should be paying attention to. Make sure you stay locked into arrowheadpride.com for everything you need to know ahead of this matchup. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. You can follow Pete on Twitter at PG Sweeney. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. We'll hear from head coach Andy Reid later on this afternoon, so make sure you're on the lookout for that. And then we will have a fresh edition of Kingdom Keys previewing everything you need to know about this game dropping tomorrow morning. So be on the lookout for that. We will talk to you guys then.